My name is Elise. I've been making the rounds on the sidewalk topic, and I know you guys are scheduled to talk about the expansion policy tonight. So first of all, I appreciate everything you guys are doing. Look into it and talk about it. I wrote this so I didn't forget something. And again, we'll have to split right after this. Unfortunately, we can't hear you out tonight, but I'd love to catch up with someone afterwards to hear how it goes and run through your minutes, whatever the easiest way is. A little bit of background on me. I'm a Mount Lebanon native, so I was born and raised in Mount Lebanon. I went to Lincoln, was first class to attend sixth grade at Jefferson, and then went on to graduate from the high school. I have 3 daughters, the oldest of whom is in kindergarten at Foster, and I chose to return to Mount Lebanon. That's not, yeah. After many years away in New York, because I love walkable communities, because of course I value the education that's available here for our kids. As much as I value their education, of course, I also value their safety and well-being, which brings me here because I continue to be so concerned about the quote unquote safe walking route in Ward 3, specifically Woodland. Like I can live with some of the side streets, but Woodland is just a total nightmare for safe walking. When I was a student in the district, 100% of my walking routes to Lincoln Jefferson in the high school were lined with sidewalks. Additionally, every intersection I crossed was controlled with traffic signals, stop signs, crossing guards. It could not be further from the experience of my daughter in Foster. So she is expected to scurry. Correct, yeah. I've calculated it. Only 6% of her route is covered with sidewalk. She's expected to scurry across Woodland in unmarked and uncontrolled intersections, which is so dangerous for anyone who lives that street, and actually is completely counter to the safe walking route. It actually says you're supposed to cross at marked intersections. It's going to lead you to marked and controlled intersections. And it's just not true for my neighbors. So we are expected to accept, just in my opinion, far too much risk on a daily basis. Okay, let's see what else. But I mean, in general, I think we can do better, obviously, to standardize safe walking in our community. I really know these disparities firsthand. I've worked with the traffic board. And I walked my daughter's safe walking route with the traffic engineer. That's right now. And he was literally diving into people's front yards to avoid getting hit by a car. So they didn't recommend stop signs, which is what I was after with the traffic board, just to become in line with the safe walking routes. But he did recommend sidewalks to improve safety, which of course the traffic board has still ignored. So I've made the round. I've been to the commissioner meetings. I've talked to school administrators. I'm planning to go to the school board meeting because I know the safe walking route is published by the district and the police department. I've spoken to the municipality. I've done the survey. So I'm here tonight just to kind of ask your board to continue to make this a priority. You're the only board that's talking about this, and I really appreciate that. But I just want to make sure that we continue to make progress on this front. I don't know the full extent to which you're editing the policy, and I'm sorry I can't stay, but my concern is with even perhaps lower thresholds of consensus and maybe reducing the financial burden, that we're still leaving this up to each homeowner and we're going to be stuck with the status quo. So that's my fear, that we make some great edits, but that we make no progress tactically on the ground. I am no expert in property laws, of course, but I just think somehow, some way in this municipality and boards, there can be a more proactive decision made to implement something else, right? And I'm open to feedback. I don't know where that lies or who has the authority to do that. But I just wanted to voice that concern because I'm so happy you guys are doing this, and I hope it can kind of move the needle in our neighborhood. But I think my guess is that we'll still need to agree to pay and to maintain the walk, of course. And I know people have their own perspectives, and of course they don't want to shell out money for this or maintain their walkway, but a number of other people don't want their kids to get a car, right? So I think for a walking district, I don't know where else to turn, but I ask you guys to help me just navigate it and if you're prioritizing.
Yes, question. So what do your children do when the leaves are piled in the side of the street?
I made this huge PowerPoint presentation for the traffic board. We all drive. you can't walk on Woodland. It's unsafe to walk with good conditions, which is basically September, and I'm hoping April and May, right? But when the leaves are on the sidewalk, or the lack of sidewalk, right, the street, or there's snow, right, mounded up next to the side, we're then walking in the middle of the road, not just the side of the road, right? So you basically drive, it's a driving district, it's a walking district.
And then the more people driving, the less safe it is for those pedestrians.
Yeah,
Less
exactly.
it.
Yeah, and it's not, schools aren't designed for the drop offs that bus are required with cars, right? So, so many kids would walk if they could just safely walk on Woodland. But there are a lot of problems, right? The lack of sidewalks, the lack of signage and control that the traffic board, in my opinion, missed on. They looked at sight lines for me, so I was advised to ask them for stop signs on the basis of inadequate sight lines rather than speed studies, because we're in like gardening season, right? Because we're going through this and there's mulch trucks everywhere. So as much as cars do speed and they're unsafe, it's hard to meet the thresholds of the traffic study because the thresholds are high. But at the intersections, they had just enough sight lines. But from my perspective as a pedestrian, the sight line matters across the whole route, right? Because when you're up at the top of the hill, you actually can't see the car coming around the bush in some random property. But that's not measured by the traffic study, looking only at the intersection. So the sight lines matter every step of the way for a walk.
And the sightlines matter when you're only 3.5, 4 feet tall.
It's crazy. So someone on the traffic board advised me to have my kids cut through multiple backyards. And that was the workaround, which is fine, but it actually, you still have to get across Woodland. And we have new residents, and someone called the cops on someone, they just didn't want them in their backyard, and I can understand that too.
Know those people.
Parade of things, yeah. It was like, yeah, it's their decision. I have to parade through my backyard, but like, can't rely on that as a safe walking route for kids. So anyway, there's a lot of different things.
For sidewalks and crosswalks and crossing guards at those crosswalks. Is that?
I think like ideally we would have sidewalks. There would be more stop signs along Woodland to slow down the cars because the speed is high and the terrain is hilly and winding, visibility is poor. I think there's different thresholds for the actual walks on the ground. I'm not sure what that is. And then for our route, we actually don't interact with the crosswalk. There's one at Vermont and Woodland at the top of the hill. But my kids have to cross Woodland before that, for the safe walking route. So we can't take advantage of the crossing guard. So yes, of course, but they told me there's constant staff.
So you cut up the side street that goes to Woodridge, then, and that street doesn't have the sidewalk out, right?
That does not have a sidewalk either, but I walk my kids backwards on Ridgeview to Eisenhower, so we cut off a piece of Woodland. Go Eisenhower, cross Woodland, walk up the hill against traffic. It's definitely, and not many people walk it, right?
Hey, Elise, so first of all, thanks for presenting. My son Sam is also in kindergarten at Foster.
Yeah.
And I have an older daughter in 4th grade there, and she actually has a number of friends in her class that live on Woodland. And one of the actual biggest driving factors for some of our air quality policies was idling cars waiting for schools. And one of the biggest things that we talked about is the neighborhood that's even worse off than you, which is the neighborhood across Connor that has to go to Foster too. Those people they just physically can't do it. It's not a realistic place for a family to raise their kids and be able to walk to Foster. And as a result,
That neighborhood, Tim, we have great sidewalks over there.
Yeah.
It's just, once you cross Connor and all.
once you cross Connor, you're playing, you're rolling the dice with your life on, parts of Terrace and all of that. And I think there are roads like Woodland in almost every neighborhood that has a school in it. And I think the problem that we see is it's not just the walkability of it, but it's the fact that as a walking community, we're creating a system of inequity for the people that don't have sidewalks, even though they're forced to walk the same amount, or they're equally forced to walk as the people that do have sidewalks. And we have an issue where we have large amounts of, pollution and traffic and everything building up in front of those schools twice a day. And there's really nothing we can do about it until there are better sidewalks and more and better access to for pedestrians from all of the locations that school services.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. Maddie's in Sam's Odyssey of the Mind group, so you saw me, you might recognize me, but I couldn't agree more. And I also wanted to say, I think it feels like we're waiting for something bad to happen. To me, that is just not acceptable for a walking. Why are we putting our most vulnerable people on the street and just hoping that they're not hit by a car, right? So I went through this whole traffic board thing over the summer. I laid off it in the back part of the year because I got busy with a new job. But the accident involving the waste management employee Isaac spurred me back into action because I think it's insane that we're basically waiting for something bad to happen here. And to me, it's just not acceptable with our children. I don't like to run on these roads myself.
I would have to imagine it's one less than as well, to improve the sidewalks that would lead to safe bus. Children.
Yes, if that was on the table, or we were making decisions based on either or, before you leave, I will say that.
Yeah.
Nixon.
Okay.
Oh, that, I won't hear what. Nixon is very interested in fixing the problem. It's just keeps moving to the top right now. So as much as residents and this board and any other board can help come up with some solutions. And I think we should probably be bold even with the sidewalk conversation, if you think there's like we talked about last time, because they're just really strong ones to appetite for. I couldn't agree more with everything, and I have like half hour of other stuff I add. So I want to do it, I want to.
I do wonder if a street plan would be a good. For the complete streets, up one way, down, would give, even if people aren't willing to put sidewalk in their yard, if that was a one-way street with a dedicated pedestrian.
And I talked to Commissioner Flynn about this other thing, and we have a little bit of a different approach, and so we're kind of looking at our boards and advisory boards especially, but I would like to pick off the most dangerous safe walk streets to schools and make those in the next couple of years. He would like to take a bigger view and look at the complete streets and be open to more drastic changes, such as, one lane or narrowing streets that are really, that's true traffic calming. I want that too. I don't have the applicant to wait 5-10 years for implementation on some of these concerning.
Yeah, that's really frustrating me because it's right, so
Yeah.
to wait another 5 years.
I know you have to leave. I would just quickly go over what we were going to discuss.
Yeah, great.
What's in the proposed change to the expansion policy, unfortunately, is more of reducing the threshold of how many people you need to install a sidewalk, right? So any one resident rather than needing 75% of the street as it's written to get municipal support. So more of a carrot than a stick. We've talked to a couple of folks. I think that is interesting to me is, are there rights of way on the edges of properties? Because it comes down to property ownership, right? Are there rights of way? And there are already existing municipality,
There's residents on Lindendale, we've taken.
I think, well, it's in our traffic code that we can force install, right? We can force a resident to install. I don't
We've
have.
done it. No, we've done it on Lindendale for a small section of it. It was very, I think controversial at the time, but I can't imagine it not. Now it's such a big trust area.
So there's nothing in the new change to the policy that removes that, right? It's definitely, we can still force installation, but the change basically was, there's too much of a burden on residents to come up with all of their neighbors to try and get a sidewalk installed with municipality support, basically dropping that to zero, right? And more of a prioritization, right? If you get more people, it's cheaper, it gets prioritized ahead of other projects, right? So,
I know, is there a way to just like set, I know money's hard to find, but like on key streets, does prioritize that with the commission's budget, right?
Yeah.
The barriers are hard to overcome.
And this is me speaking personally, but like, I think a lot of this comes down to public safety and traffic board, and our thresholds are too high for traffic studies, because we have to give, 10-mile-an-hour buffers, which is ridiculous. So we need to reevaluate some of those things. When we talk about traffic studies, unfortunately, that's not the this policy, right? So those are things that need to be addressed certainly.
So one thing we don't really address in the policy, I mean, we set priorities based on different criteria. But is there anything in our draft policy that would have the municipality or school districts working together to actively look at where sidewalks would be, most important, most urgent, and actually solicit those residents? Because as a resident,
Yes, there
and
is.
that's the part that I wanted.
So, yeah, that is one piece in there, that is up for, a vote, hopefully a vote tonight, that we can pass it on. That's my hope for tonight, is that we can move it forward, the commission to get into a wider, both commission and public audience. But one piece in there is outreach from the municipality to the top, and I put 5 in the thing, but whatever it is, streets that really need to be addressed, right? And rather than it being the public coming to the municipality, is the municipality looking on saying, like, we've identified this year, these 5 streets really need to get sidewalks. So that is part of it.
And is that the municipality you're recommending do the evaluation on what those 5 areas are?
Exactly.
Okay, so it wouldn't be like a board necessarily.
No, it would theoretically be based on the scoring criteria that's in the sidewalk expansion policy.
Okay.
So how fast the road is it like, I don't want to say a cut through road, but a cut through road, right? Is there?
With the
these
build
types
up on 19, that one gets.
Right. So, and in the policy, I specifically called out that it should be like traffic study, not speed limit, right? And the actual speeds, not the buffer speeds. So all of these things go into the scoring criteria to basically say, how safe is this road? We really need a sidewalk here. What are the top 5 roads per year, or whatever, it could be 10, it could be whatever. The emission size, but we should have staff calculating this. It's doable to calculate how many roads are dangerous, basically, and address those first.
It seems like we would know, like, yeah, we know, like, I feel like we should already have the text, but at least if we're looking at schools, safe routes to schools. The big,
Unfortunately, it tends to be somewhat anecdotal, and I'd like it to be data driven. But anecdotal is also, important. So there's a number, my son goes to Jefferson, there's a number that I drop him off every day that I have been on sidewalks on this road, right? So same thing applies, right?
And you were talking about completing, like, where there are sidewalks on other ends, completing, where there are smaller properties.
That is part of it, yeah.
And I know you want it to be data driven, and policy oriented, but sometimes when you just have a big need like Woodland or
Certainly.
Root Street or whichever street you want to pick. Root Street, Ella Street, yeah, Salem,
Yep, Salem.
and we can obviously keep going. Where a lot of kids are walking without sidewalks.
And my response to that would be that I think that goes beyond the expansion policy. The expansion policy per se, and going to the commission directly and using more of the stick than the carrot.
I was gonna
right?
say, you pick one and you canvas that community and see who has the highest willingness. And then that's your data. This street is the top 5 most dangerous streets and has a 60% buy-in.
That's that outreach person, right? That's
Yeah.
that
So
outreach
good.
part
I
of it,
think
right? Like,
that's the next step.
identify the 5 streets per year that are the top of the list that need a sidewalk. Outreach to those property owners. And go
And
from
then
there.
once you do it, it catches on. So then
And
I
imagine,
want that.
if we put that, I don't disagree at all, at the kind of thing. we put that on the municipality, it's the DJ Way, it's the Everman. They charges us, when they charge us, it's gonna be many thousands of dollars just to get that data. I mean, it's 20,000 for a couple of million. So many thousand,
This can be a GIS thing. This doesn't have to be a game.
okay.
You can do this in GIS.
Okay. So it's not
Hey,
that-
Sean, I wonder if one possible way to do this, just because surveys, I think would be great. And then whoever was just mentioning taking a survey of where they, if they walk to school, if they feel safe. The problem is that some surveys change based on who's living in the house. So like, for instance, my house had a 80-year-old couple in it. And then when they moved, it then got filled with my family, which has 4 little children, which is a very different demographic and usage of sidewalk than who had lived in there before. I almost wonder if there needs to be a 5th criteria for kind of qualifying the roads. Like you have the multipliers of, whether it's an arterial road or a local road, you have the speed limit. But I almost wonder if there should be another one that's like how many houses are served by that road, just in general, how many houses, because you might have only 3 kids on a cul-de-sac one year, but then 10 years from now, that cul-de-sac might have 3 families with little kids moving into it that all need a sidewalk to walk to school. I don't know if that's something that, like, there's no criteria or multiplier in this policy for just the number of people that would be using that. I know that arterial collector and local kind of does that, but you could have a residential local road that has 50, Vala Vista, for instance, has over 50 houses on it. But like Hoodridge has maybe 20 in the same distance. So it's there's a lot more people walking up Vala Vista versus walking on Hoodridge on a given day. That's just one example. Both of those streets have sidewalks, but if you found a comparable street that didn't have a sidewalk, how would that weigh differently?
Like there were provisions in there for distance to school, distance to public transit. I took those out specifically because I didn't want it to matter. I wanted anyone, regardless of where it was, to be eligible, to be ranked. Like I wanted it to be more equal. Every street should be a safe walking street, right? It shouldn't matter how far you are. Like every street should be eligible for sidewalks. And density is, it's going to come down to staff to figure out where the projects go, right? A bigger project, a more connected project. If there are more people on that street that have kids that say, yes, I want a sidewalk, that's going to factor into the connectedness metric that's in the policy.
Yeah, it's a question about that.
Yeah.
There are so many minor streets that abut to Woodland, right?
Yeah.
So ideally they would all have sidewalks, they don't. But I'm most focused on the feeder street, right? That they all.
Right.
So they connect with what's matters.
Yeah, so like my answer to you is probably like continue, like do the work and outreach to people in Woodland and see how many are interested in doing this if they have the support. The more that can be on board, the faster it can be prioritized under this policy. Obviously, it needs to go through a lot of steps before it gets accepted.
Yeah.
But the kind of goal is to reduce the threshold, at least get some, and then it becomes an exercise in, oh, these 3 people got a sidewalk and I'm the only person that doesn't have one, and I should really look into getting that done. Right. So
Yeah, I just think like someone somewhere here in this municipality can be more of a stick on what type, like it seems piecemeal, it seems beautiful in some way. And it's just frustrating. But I appreciate what you're doing.
completely understand.
Working with what you can.
And my hope is also that by elevating this discussion about sidewalks, and the comprehensive plan also brought this, like the public surveys have brought this very much up. So the comprehensive plan is, there's a lot of comments from the public about we need a sidewalk, we need a sidewalk here. It's possible that this policy isn't the right avenue. It could be commission saying,
Yeah.
we're gonna do this and we're gonna enforce it, right? Yeah.
Woodland is a walking street.
Yeah,
The other thing I can't reconcile is the safe walking route with the lack of traffic signals. And I know the traffic warrants are just too high to convert to action, but to any extent. That can be a discussion as you continue to talk about this, because you can't reconcile them, they contradict each other, and the traffic board had no interest in that, even though. The police sit on that board, you know, so I'm going to the school board next. I think I encourage this comment. Okay.
I'll-
3 minutes.
But like, there's just so many problems, but anyway, thank you for your help.
Thank you. And
No,
I
I think-
direct you back to the traffic board though.
Right, yeah, but they need to agree on what they want. They publish it. So the warrants
No, I think
add up. Police and school district publish it, and it says. It doesn't add up, basically, it said there should be traffic signal. But really. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, thank you for hearing and working so hard to make it happen.
All right, thanks for your help. Say thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Sean, remind you what you- Well,
We can come back to it. It's on the agenda. It's actually, it's not sweet. Talk about it.
Great.
A long time.
It was, but that was good though,
Okay.
very good. Next is the approval of the January 20.
Motion to approve.
And junior board member liaison to Felix drop off.
I lost them, huh?
Yeah,
David, leave it set.
Oh, yeah, I have to leave like right now, but I've prepared the junior board report in an email, so I will send that to you guys. Okay, thank you.
It's emailing it.
Okay, so I wasn't sure.
Okay, thank you, Felix. Have a good night. Bonner.
All right, well, when that comes in, maybe we can move back to that again. School board liaison report.
Yeah, that's me. So I'm Melinda Burdick and I do have some exciting news. On Monday, Dr. Steinhauer will be presenting the Green Levo plan. It's a dashboard on our website that tracks energy usage in terms of fuel and diesel, water, electricity, recycling, gas, and LED projects over multiple years with the goal of reducing the usage and increasing efficiency. So that's going to roll out in February. We'll be having discussion around that on Monday. And on the following week, we would be voting on a draft well, there's currently a draft of a sustainability statement for the district. These are great policies and statements and goals to set in place as we transition to another superintendent, because it sets the precedent that these are priorities to our district. So we will be working through some phrasing and some wordage and verbiage and tweaking it to get it right. We have a number of written statements that are drafts at this point, but I've been saying it's coming, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming on Monday. So that's exciting in terms of discussion around that.
Yes, how closely does it align to sustainability policy, but
Climate,
climate,
yeah.
the thing that was passed by the municipality,
climate
It-
action plan.
not the
It was
climate action
the-
plan,
I know you're
just a
talking
statement of support
Oh,
that
okay.
had been drafted. Was
Well,
passed.
would you send that to me so that I can bring that up in the
Yes.
discussion? Because I think that that's the purpose of the liaison. So that's why that is my purpose for taking what, other boards have created and bridging that, so. I could probably dig and find it, or you could send it to me, and that would be great.
Yeah, climate risk.
Climate resolution, okay. They've attended, Dr. Steinhauer and I believe, our business manager, Rob Galetko, have attended, a symposium on how to do this and what is successful in other districts and so forth, so. They're wishing the Mary, I think, what they've learned and what precedent exists with, making it relevant to Mount Lebanon and then forward thinking and being implemented by, predecessor. We've also made so that's the environmental stuff, general school board things we are, making great progress with Hazard Young and ITEA, which is the company that we've hired to be our representatives to search committee, to find the headhunter for the next, superintendent. 780 constituents were, involved in giving input, whether it was the 32 different meetings that were held or the forums are included in that, and survey answers. So wish it had been a bigger end, but got 780 inputters to that. That has been compiled.
I have a question about that.
Yeah,
Did you solicit, anybody that works at the school, with teachers, admin, aid? And was that anonymous, or they looked at that anonymously?
they were able to complete the survey anonymously, but they were in person or online with their names and faces. They did not have to give their name.
Okay. Yeah.
And it was not recorded for that reason. And it was not attended by their, like, a teacher superior wouldn't be there, a board member would not be there. It was respectful of their privacy, but, yeah, if they wanted to be completely anonymous, it was the survey online. Or, participating on Zoom with a different, like, you can tweak that. If you want to. So yes, they had the board, they had the superintendent, the past board members, they had booster group organizations, community forums, middle school students, high school students, middle school staff, high school staff, elementary staff. I know I'm missing some central office staff, government leaders. Solicitor was included, like everybody that we could get to be included, was. Then they took that and put that together in a document, which is now on our website under. It's not under school board, it's under About Us, and it's under Superintendent Search has its own tab. And then that's been published. You can see which numbers of how people fell out in disaggregated data. So you can see if you're interested in that. And then a list of desirable characteristics, attributes in our next year. In very tall order, as you would expect. This is a superior job, looking for somebody who is superior, and it is a tall order, and we're looking for that individual, and there are applicants, and we're progressing along. Does anybody have questions about that?
Yeah, how many applicants are you gonna, how are you gonna bring them to interview?
I think that's behind closed doors at this point.
And who's doing the interviews? Is there any board members that are doing
The board.
Okay. Great.
The link to, let me know if you've got it.
Thanks.
Getting things, but the slide deck that I prepared as well as the actual text of the resolution. So
Okay. One other thing is that they've changed light bulbs. I know this is really the minutia, but they've changed light bulbs. And I brought this in case anybody really likes, you know, seeing how much has been saved. But by location, every one of these schools, Jefferson, Mill, and Foster, Hoover, Howe, they're all listed down here, all 10 of them. What the monthly savings is for replacing, for example, 2 400-watt floodlights with 2 100-watt LED lights. For those of you who are really interested in these savings, here it is. You know, yeah, I think it's interesting if you're interested.
So one question on the sustainability statement, is that way it's crafted by who and then who decides like this bit, like, is it just?
The board will vote on it, and before voting on it, the board would tweak it a little bit. I think it looks like there's 12 to 15 of them now. Slightly different variations of one another. We have a DEI statement, and now we're going to have a sustainability statement, and we've made these statements overarching with policy under them. So the policies would drill down specifically how to get to that mission statement, but yeah, it'll be an overarching statement, which has been written by central office, I believe, by Dr. Steinhauer and Dr. Well, I don't know who drafted it, but for sure Dr. Steinhauer and most likely Ron Davis. That's what votes on. The school board tweaks it with the words and then votes on it. It's a process through the discussion meeting on Monday and then the votes the following Monday. The way our monthly meetings are set up, there's a discussion meeting in which no decision, usually no final decisions are made, but a lot of the discussion happens then. That's we keep that as transparent as we possibly can be. I have a question asker. I ask a lot of questions in every meeting. Sometimes it's because I think that getting the information out there by the form of the answer to a question is helpful to the community. And then sometimes it's because I truly don't know myself and would need that information to make a decision. And then in the following meeting, there's voting, and there's less discussion in that. So if a community member were to tune in only to the voting, it would seem like, well, you didn't even talk about it. If you tuned in only the discussion meeting, you would think, well, what are you going to do about that? So it's important, I think, to know that the two vote.
I appreciate the question, by the way, I really do.
Thank you. I do like
Do you mind if I ask a quick question? You said that you're going to have like a discussion meeting and then a voting meeting. Was there ever like a public committee? So I was actually on the DEI committee that helped develop that mission statement. And I know we had probably like 8 meetings with the committees that were all kind of supervised by school admin and board members, and they helped kind of draft that initial bit that was then ultimately voted on. Is there, I guess my question is it just school board members developing this statement? Or is it community-wide? Are you seeking help from community members that might have specific expertise in certain aspects of the policy?
Well, we always welcome informed public comment. That is most welcome. Whenever it's on our agenda, it is published to the website, and any item up for public comment, if you know in advance that you want to address that as a community member, you can be scheduled by calling the office or emailing Kim Walters, who is Dr. Steinhauer's secretary. So you can get on the agenda to speak to a topic. If it just, if that doesn't work out and you have an idea that you want to share more impromptu, there is an opportunity twice in each meeting to do so. I think I'd be speaking out of turn if I said there's not a community survey on this particular sustainability issue. Making a general policy statement is the work of the board and the administration. I think with the exception of the DEI, which I think they pulled in a broader group. The DEI group still meets once a month. And those meetings are open to the public. They're in the very same room an hour before our meetings. Once a month, and that schedule's published to the website as well.
So the agenda will be posted, will the draft of the statement be part of that?
Yes, usually.
So it could be reviewed before the.
I would say after the discussion meeting, that the first choice of what the statement is, or maybe a couple of choices would be published. Mostly it's listening in the discussion in terms of what's on Monday, but then once it's on the voting agenda, that that can be viewed on the website. It's never too late for change.
Realistically, is it?
It's good to attend the discussion meeting if you wish to, and if you wish to give comment to it. Also, I read every letter I get. We all do, and the board president is the responder to all letters that we get. He's the only one in the position of speaking for the board. So you won't receive individual responses from the 9 of us. But we read every letter you get and we think about every letter. So those who have strong opinions after listening to the discussion, if you don't have it ready to speak about, do send a letter to the board. It's board email list. You can also find that on the website. We are available and we are reading it.
That's good to know. I mean,
That's
I
very
never,
good.
yeah, I think whether you get so many emails, when you mentioned about many emails, and we respond by words with a lot easier, you know, than kind of get a list or whatever is. Respond to.
It's hard for me to not respond. I am a communicator. So it's hard for me not to. It is not appropriate for all 9 of us to speak, send 9 different responses, and then you wouldn't have gotten anywhere. So you get one response. And that's how that is. Yeah.
It is what it is.
Sean came and spoke.
Oh, nice.
I'm gonna write a letter too.
Good.
Talk about sidewalks.
So, not important.
Oh, the school calendar is important. Were you for the 1 week or against it? So you the reason we got the 1 week.
It's all Sean.
And it's, I know it was, people have different ends of the spectrum, but coming from a place where my family is spread out throughout the country, I really appreciate for them to drive and see them and not have to fly, which is cost prohibitive and it's terrible in every way. So thank you for letting me drive to Chicago and or Michigan.
It's good for our teachers to be able to do that. It's good for our kids to have, our kids or teachers to have some time off. I like the term absentee. Yeah, we looked at that data. The new calendar only adds 1 day at the end, so go all the way through Friday. It's still the same length of days. For those who need to obtain childcare, it's still the same number.
Same number of days.
It's just the complete week all the way to Friday instead of having to hunt for childcare on that Friday. And the Monday after Easter is now in school, and the Monday before Easter is off. That one Friday got switched to the Tuesday, and there's a half a day that we're just playing with, and there they took care of. So it really, it's like a Jenga game, and it's very complicated. It's not just, well, let's take a vacation. We want to take vacations. There are a certain number of instructional hours. It's drilled down to the hours per quarter and per semester. It's very complicated. It is bound by the collective bargaining agreement. It's bound by state educational law, and it's not just, let's just slide this around. like, it's quite complicated, but we did it. And Dr. Davis
you.
did it.
All right, I'm done.
Passing your light bulbs around, when anybody else wants to see how much our light bulbs save them.
Yeah.
Actually,
Awesome
it's
report.
a little bit.
Wow. So now we're on to ESB business. We've got 3 topics here. First one is the plastic ordinance, which I brought up the last time, and I had a couple things I wanted to bring up. I don't have the draft ordinance, but I did do some additional research into kind of what other locations are doing, and the flip side, which I think David, you started to talk about last time, there was actually, I don't know if anyone else heard it, but there's like a very brief like podcast about like why we should not do something like this, because it's actually a lot more, help me out with this, but the overall, like from a climate perspective, the impacts of using the reusable bags is a lot worse, like way worse.
What about paper?
There's-
Worse than plastic?
If you're just looking at climate, yeah.
Well, and
The
it's also how
production-
you
Actually, just looked it up
Like
today. It's-
production of them, and then in some cases, even like the disposal. Not paper, not so much in that category, but I know the reasonable ones, but they actually, it was like, I can send it to you guys, it was like a 9-minute. It was interesting, how many times you would have to reuse your like tote bag compared to your plastic bag, and it was like,
How many?
20,000, or it was some insane amount of time, yeah, that you would have to. So from an overall, so I thought it was at least worth bringing up, because in the end, I was like, oh, this leaves me like really discouraged. Now, in the end, it was like, I don't think it was saying don't try to do better, but what you really want to encourage is reuse of plastic bags. Don't necessarily
Eliminate that?
ban them. Bans are not, probably not good, but a fee or like something like that. That can
Charging for that.
encourage reuse.
Yeah.
So bring your plastic bags you got,
Yeah.
and back and reuse them until you can't use them anymore. It's better than to.
So does this point us towards discouraging the use of the very flimsy, very terrible bags? Right, like there are classes of plastic bags, right? Some are very thick and can be reused. I have a number of them that I acquired 4 years ago overseas that I still use, right? I still reuse these plastic bags on occasion. So is there a like, and I think this was something that came up when we were giving the presentation 6-8 months ago from, I don't recall whoever brought this up in the first place. That there was a very specific type of bag that they wanted to get rid of versus all plastic bags. Is that part of extreme plastic, right? Which would have. Yeah, so I actually sent back. Yeah, I use this for everything. Can I share? Honey, did you add it to? David, right click.
Very quickly.
Or maybe the 3 dots. Yeah, the 3 dots there. And then. Yep.
It does pain me to think about.
Just feels wrong. but,
Well,
you know,
And part of it was also if you ban them, then sales of plastic bags in areas where they banned them went way up.
So,
Because people are eating plastic bags, they go and buy them.
that's actually that graph. This was a study done in, I forget the number of counties in California. And if you notice on the left, that's the log difference, so that one is 10 tons. So it's a lot.
So what is the measure of their,
This one was actually just units sold,
okay,
which. So your measurement perspective, and I'm sorry, I don't have a good graphic for this part. But the, well, I haven't made it. 12 to 22%. Okay, 12 to 22% of the plastic carryout bags were reused as trash bags pre-regulation. And they determine, and they don't say by how much, probably because there's too big of an error bar on this, but it was towards heavier bags. So what they would be replaced with was towards heavier bags.
Those are around, most of the day, I didn't quite get to fully understand that graph.
Yeah, I mean, I can actually send you
Oh,
the article.
It's a podcast.
I'm sure we're not
No, it's just the short read.
the only ones to struggle with this very question, right? And I'm guessing there are probably some communities that. And I'm thinking that maybe some best practices exist. For folks that have figured it out successfully implement the plan that is more environmentally friendly, sustainable. Not necessarily following the path to just banning plastic bags.
And that's kind of where I left after I did this. I'm like, okay, I don't think like rushing to ban them is right. Or even really rushing to put a fee or tax on them. I think we need like to look a little bit more to see what are the best practices, what are the kind of options, because maybe it is, we still end with like a fee, but we also pair that with like working partnership to provide these really amazing plastic bags because South Africa, Europe, and then we have those in the community and people are using those more and they're bringing it back.
If we need to ban something, I would vote for street. For thought. I don't know that there are one or two take out shells that are still. But I think there's just.
Do we have a shared folder for this?
We do,
Yes.
but,
Oh, no.
Oh, okay.
but you could, it's a different system if you wanted, but there is a SharePoint drive.
No, I'm on that. I'm just
Okay.
wondering, do we have a folder already?
Alright.
Plastics.
Plastics, I think recyclable, recycling with waste.
That was for the.
You can make one.
Yeah, go ahead.
You make one, because then I can throw the stuff that I found in there too. And the other thing we had talked about was, if we decided that a fee is the right way to go, and ultimately, we would need to involve like a solicitor, like what are the steps to make that happen? What does it look like? How is it policed? All of that. So I mean, I guess I would like to understand that before we go to commission, say, hey, here's this like policy on, we want to place a fee structure on plastic, without really understanding what that means. And doing a little bit more, like have a meeting or a conversation partnership, like how can we do this right? And it just felt like it was a little too rushed before we should really think about, okay, because once we roll this out, there will be questions and how we communicate it, and how we educate the public on why we're doing it this way, and what they can do. So,
When there's something that like the board kind of aligns around, I can get a meeting with the solicitor and be there and or just send them over. If there's just a couple questions. But there's always going to be a lot of. The solicitors usually kind of present at the municipality, so it's good to have something from faith with the research. If otherwise, that
makes sense.
Now, everything that I just uploaded to the new plastic bags folder is peer reviewed except for what you're kind of describing, and I would actually caution of this one. Okay. Oh, no, here it is. There's a policy white paper that is specific to Pittsburgh from the Plastics Collaborative. And I read through it. It actually seems pretty reasonable, and it discusses exactly what they're talking about, and they had several working groups. And several case studies, one in Ohio, one in Chicago, one in Maine, talking about, and they included plastics in general. So they actually talk about bottle deposit as well. Since this is not the state environmental sustainability ordinance. And they recommended, again, I don't actually know who this group is, but everything they've written is backed up, like it is supported by everything else that I've written. And they suggest.
That paper, plastic and paper.
I believe it was for just, yeah, actually disposable bags.
Yeah, awesome. That's it.
So,
So maybe we want to right back where we think we want to be, but I think I just wanted to have this a little bit more time and then. We can look at what David has, I can put a couple of resources I found and I can get my paper. Everybody having a little bit of time to just look through that, think about it, and then talk about it again. We're ready to push policy forward quite yet. Okay. And then next on the list is sidewalk policy.
Yep. So we obviously discussed it quite a bit. This section hopefully will be fairly brief. The reminder, basically the main change to the existing sidewalk policy is to do away with the 75% property owner threshold for municipal assistance in installing the sidewalks. Right, anyone can request assistance. It's a matter of prioritization based on the scoring criteria. That's the number one difference between what is currently on the books and what I would propose that we change. So any one property owner could request assistance installing the sidewalk. Bigger projects, things that score higher, not necessarily bigger projects, right? If you're the last person on a block and you reach 100% completion on that block, that should score higher than maybe one or two people that are just going to be one-offs on a block. But that's kind of that's scoring criteria. Based on feedback from last month, I did add the permeable sidewalk where possible, where feasible. So we should, that's in there both for new installations and replacements. So like because the policy is expanded to include replacements. So that's in there as well. I added just kind of an IE that the maintenance task for property owners largely looks like snow removal. It's not like they have to go out there and treat the sidewalk or maintain or like fill it with concrete or anything like that, right? It's
What is a permeable sidewalk?
that allows rainwater to flow through it.
Like,
We'll take it out.
Okay.
No, it's basically pavers that are placed in
Oh,
appropriately
okay.
and are
Like what's outside of C20.
That's a little bit. South Park is still. Fresh plantings, it's actually very good. That's nice, watching this. My kids laugh.
that is permeable. In that case, that's concrete.
That's
Oh, yeah.
But
Check this out.
Wow, that's crazy.
What do they put in it?
Yeah, I'm scared.
Is that maybe another issue?
no, it's, it
Oh,
it
like-
retains.
Yeah,
It
right.
doesn't. It's not leaking anything else out.
okay,
That's-
but then doesn't that freeze?
So.
It runs
Through, it goes through.
And then.
I was,
freeze?
so I was looking at this actually based on last time and a lot of places. It actually, the ice and snow melts better. And it was something, it was a colder city than here. Decided to do an entire neighborhood. It was Minneapolis or something like that. And decided to do an entire neighborhood. And it was just done last year, so. How long it lasts with salt deteriorates everything, including concrete. This, what they did was not concrete, it's asphalt. And two are different, obviously. So we'll see how quickly it deteriorates, but it's pretty good stuff. And they did it Friday, and it's hanging around as well. That was done. It's 5 years. That's all. Concrete will be a little bit different.
Anyway, so basically the point for discussion here is, are there additional questions? I didn't get any comments on the document. It's a shared drive. It's been a few months that we've been discussing it, and I'd basically be looking for a vote from the ESB on recommending this to commission for public comment, for commission discussion, to try and move this forward at this point.
I had a couple questions, but I also didn't discuss it at a commission level, so I don't want to hold it up.
Yeah, yeah.
But the proximity to school, I know you talked about that, or you looked at it, you considered it, and
Yeah.
proximity for transportation. You just really, I want to value that. You know, like, why are you laying on not?
I landed on not because, well, for schools specifically, I feel like every single street should have, like, should be a safe walking route, right? There's no street that shouldn't be a safe walking route, and that shouldn't, just because you're further away from a public transit stop or from a school, doesn't mean that we should take away points from you, right? I didn't want it to be a negative rather than a positive.
It's maybe there's more traffic closer to school though with drop off and pick up, and so by definition, it's a little bit more dangerous for pedestrians.
Perhaps. So there's nothing currently in there about traffic volume. So that could be an addition in there that could be added, right? Road speed is the biggest one that I have in there right now, is if people are actually doing the speed limit, if you're close to a school, you're in a 15-mile-an-hour zone. If people are actually doing 15 in that zone, just not sidewalk policy's job, but if they're doing 15 in that zone, it should be relatively safe. For the most part, the schools themselves within the school zones are largely sidewalk, right? That's taken care of. It's that section that's just outside,
Yeah.
right?
yeah,
In some areas,
Yeah.
that would be the, you know, the question mark there.
Okay, her point about Woodland is exactly.
Right.
Just 200 blocks off of the streets that lead into Boston.
But should that be prioritized over, you know, where, you know, right across the street from Connor, where it's 6 or 7 blocks away, but it still makes a corridor right to the school, right?
As long as there is another option offered, for children to get to school, I think they're all.
I think one data point is not how fast the cars are going, but the behavior of the walkers themselves. So how many walkers are there? Are they crossing? What's the volume of walkers? Not the volume of cars.
The walking route is so.
Yeah, no,
Yes, there's like no one, we could just count people, and it's so, like, I know, that's so simple, it's not a big data model or anything, but if you were standing at Bower Hill and Ruth, for example, watching those kids cross, there's no painted crosswalk, there's no crossing guard, and that is their school, and they're headed right there, and they are in front of me as I turn left, and then they are in front of me as I turn right. There's a constant flow of 11
Belinda,
to 15-year-olds.
I went after
walking.
that for hours, I've been after that crosswalk, we didn't have a office. Can't get it.
But that's,
I didn't get it either.
yeah.
That's
not
not
side-
side, that's
If
crosswalk.
they don't want people to cross there, so they technically don't want to crosswalk there, we didn't put it on site.
Because there is the
So
side.
they say, we have other places to cross, and then the only thing to do is enforce preventing kids from crossing there occasionally. They don't want to cross.
The other thing I'll bring it
Yeah.
back to, this is a carrot for private property owners to install sidewalks, right?
Yeah,
If there are areas where commission feels there should be sidewalks,
that's different.
I totally feel that they should enforce their provision to say, we are going to install a sidewalk here, right? And we should do that more.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Yeah.
And okay, then the next question, and the last question is, how do we make it even more of a carrot, like free, cheaper, and not the either or, you know?
I'm wondering if there are any grants.
Yeah, what is the carrot? Like, we will help you. What is?
And they supplement
There is
10%
assistance.
and maintain it, and
Yep.
shovel it, and replace.
10% of construction costs, if there are additional. I left it in its current form for the cost sharing, it was actually even more generous than I thought it was. Basically, it's 10% of the construction cost, if it's just the sidewalk, if there's a retaining wall or other project costs involved, it's additional cost with a cap on it, there is a cap. Or sorry, it's over a certain amount, it's really expensive, it's 50% of the project cost. ADA engineering costs are not included, that's all covered by the municipality. A lot of this comes down to, and sorry, we also add the provision, Andrew asked to add a provision for a payment plan through the municipality, so you can pay over 3 years at a theoretically low interest rate. I don't know what that would be, it's obviously up for discussion. So that's kind of the, like, it should be really low cost compared to, and you're getting municipal rates for the installation, which are going to be, from what we've heard, about 50% of private rate, if you were to put it in yourself. So it's 50% cheaper to start with, and you're only paying 10% of that.
Why would anyone want to pay you 10%?
We did, so we have
Skin in the
existing
game.
sidewalk.
Right,
and
right, to do,
To maintain it, so kids are safe, so I don't get sued when somebody flying off their scooter because we had, you know, a bump or whatever. When the municipality came through and replaced certain parts of sidewalks, so the municipality offered to replace sidewalk because the roots were damaging portions of it. And then they gave us the option to replace, you know, pieces on our property. And so we chose to have most of those replaced, to keep it uniform, to make it look nice, and it was a very reasonable cost.
But you weren't,
out there.
okay, but you weren't going from not shoveling at all of a sudden the sidewalk, I have to make shovel, and I have to pay for that. It's a big ask, I mean, I would say, we could do it, unless we could get you back, then next year, we can make it even, you know,
I mean, we can't
easier.
we can't come up with shovelers.
Yeah.
Like, that's not part of the job. per se.
No, I wasn't
Right,
saying just
so-
that, yeah.
I mean, but I would love to put an actual dollar figure on this, right? Like that would, that's a big part of it, right? What is it? And I did get actually the cost for, let me.
A lot of people responded about the walkability committee when we did the big survey.
Everybody wants sidewalks, and when I go to my street and I say, "Can we put them in?" They say on the other side of the street. That's in fact, everywhere I try to put
Well,
in
and-
sidewalk, for safe walking. I would think get it. Because they don't wanna shovel them, so if we're gonna all actually pay 10%. I don't know, I mean. Yes, let's try it, it's something.
I'm just amazed as a walking district that in many decades, not much has changed.
That's true. It's true.
Hey, Sean, one thought, I think one of the issues that's coming up, like, for instance, if the people on Woodland, like if 50% of the people on Woodland all got together and decided that they really wanted to go after a sidewalk, I guess, how does the percentage of people that want the sidewalk on their road factor into kind of the prioritization of that road? As I know that like the scoring kind of identifies which roads the municipality would identify as needing a sidewalk more. But if the property owners approached the municipality first, before their street's been identified as a high priority item,
Yep.
and they all get together and say, I mean, is it just the assumption that everybody wants a sidewalk, and so we have to kind of like, or is there something about people actually getting together and trying to show that they want it more than somebody
No.
else?
No, the assumption, so since the original policy was passed 10 years ago, roughly 10 years ago, I think it's been used once.
Yeah.
So the it's too onerous for people to actually use it, to actually get 75% of their block to say we want this. The,
Oh, I'm not saying that they need to still get 75. I'm saying like, if one person wants it on their street, and then the next street over, 50% of the residents on that street say they want it.
Yep.
Where is that? How does that factor in to the
Basically,
prioritization of those
there's a
streets?
limited budget, right? There is, like, at the end of the day, it comes down to money, right? There are only so many dollars allocated to sidewalk construction. Theoretically, we've been accruing these dollars for this purpose that we haven't spent because only one project has happened in the 10 years. I don't know if that's actually true, but that would be my hope, that there's actually budget sitting there for this. That's also part of the policy, is that we should be looking at the budget and like, how much do we spend every year on replacement? How much should we be spending every year on installation? Are we setting aside enough money for this? Where is, like, is there demand?
Right.
And judging it based on that, right? So all of those factors definitely come in. And so anyway, taking it back to your question, right? If we pass this policy and suddenly everybody wants a sidewalk, right? We have to prioritize
Yes.
because we don't have enough money to do every single sidewalk
Yes.
all at once, right? It may take 20 years to actually go through and provide all of those sidewalks to everybody that wants one. We need some sort of criteria to say that this is a higher priority than others. That's where it comes in. Does that answer your question? I would love for that.
I know. I think after the league.
Um,
Point about budget is.
Sorry, and I did pull up, I had asked Andrew to look into, so the one project that I know did happen is North Meadowcroft sidewalk installation. We dug up the numbers on that. The total construction cost was $52,000 for North Meadowcroft. 10,000 of that was engineering cost, and residents paid $5,000 in, so they paid 10%, right? 5,000 total. I don't know what the breakdown of that was. North Meadowcroft has many homes along it, right? So if that were evenly distributed across that section of road, then, you know, it probably broke down to hundreds of dollars per person, per homeowner. So that's the range we're talking about, right? This happened at the school board meeting when we were talking about, you know, if we want to increase tax a tiny bit, we got the village rate off, and then like, oh, we're talking thousands of dollars a month. No, it's actually only like $5 or $10 a month that we're talking, right? So we need actual dollar figures here to be able to make some sense of it. You know, if it costs, you know, a property is 30 feet long and it costs $5,000 to install a sidewalk, and the resident's going to be 10% of that, they're paying $500 instead of 5,000.
I've got to go.
We gotta vote on it though. We don't have to vote on it. Yeah.
But all right, so moved, but before I do that, I wish I could be a part of the work discussion, but also glass recycling. That really needs to be discussed more, because the 60% number, I'm not sure where that came from, and it's not in line with. I got you. Thank you. Thanks, Sway.
Are there other questions? Tim, did I answer your question?
Yeah, I think I just was wondering, you know, if there's, you know, I think there are intangibles about the need for walking, and I think that was probably more what the resident on Woodland was talking about, was just sometimes there are intangibles that are very difficult to quantify.
Yeah.
And that's where I think having some type of factor about demand for the sidewalk, as opposed to just, you know, identifying this sidewalk is a higher priority based on these criteria. If there's room for a factor that's based on actual stated demand by the residents on that sidewalk or on that street.
Yeah, so my goal here is basically two parts, right? Like, make it less onerous for homeowners that want to sign home, right? Make it cheaper for them. But also get people talking about this, right? And bring up those dangerous areas, bring sidewalks, I think sidewalks are right at the forefront. But,
Give us an actionable plan,
right,
which I
like,
would like.
so this is one path, right? This is one path where homeowners can do this and make it easier for them to do so. If there's another path where things are really, really necessary,
Mhm.
let's use that, right? There already is that existing
Yeah.
path, let's use that more. It comes down to budget, right? Part of it is, budgeting properly. Hopefully I put that in there. I should double check that, but anyway, I would like to promote it out of this room and to a higher level, so.
And I mentioned the wrong street, it was Greenhurst, but the municipality 20, 30 years ago forced the sidewalk there, it's not complete, it's patchy, but none of that happened.
Imagine that street without. signs.
Exactly, it's already,
Maybe we'll say that about Woodland in 30 years.
that's, no, not the 30 years.
I move that we move the sidewalk expansion policy as written to a vote and. So we have quorum, right? Still with Claire and Tim. Yep.
So then the chair can say, all in favor,
All in favor?
I
and then any opposed.
Any opposed?
Great votes for Tim and Claire. Well, we can't-
I said I don't know if you heard.
Thanks,
Awesome,
Tim.
Great.
I think it passed
Claire
unanimously.
needs to be able to speak. Next. Hi, Claire. Are you able to hear us now?
Thanks for letting me in. I had been listening along, but I hadn't been invited, so thanks. Aye. Aye for the sidewalks.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
All right, passes unanimously then.
All right. Good progress.
So the next item, if you want, Megan, you can get into it, or you can table it for the next meeting, because it's 5 to 8, and I know people want to talk about glass recycling.
Right.
Pull your calls.
Let me just say briefly, we talked the last time about having a work plan, and we did this very informally at the beginning of last year. We haven't revisited. I pulled back up what we had put together last year. We can check a couple things off the list, but there's still a few that are ongoing. So, how about if I resend that out and then we think about, the things that are remaining, any new items, and instead of trying to start brainstorming at 8 o'clock, why don't we make that a discussion topic for the next meeting?
Yeah, and consider promoting on that work plan, just consider promoting things that are already in process, like the sidewalk expansion policy. Right, glass recycling, that's a possible thing that.
Does that sound like a good plan? I think we'll have a more productive discussion if we start it earlier in the evening, and people have time to think about it. So, commission business glass recycling.
Well, I know Bonnie has a memo, I can take it and you can fill in anything if you want, Bonnie, that's good. Okay, the memo was circulated to the full board, right? From and it's also printed here. The couple key pieces I wanted to emphasize is that the end of our, can everyone hear me okay? Yeah, Can you hear me online? Like, thumbs up? No?
It's a little
Yeah, we
garbled.
can, yeah, we can hear you.
You can hear me? A little hard. Our 5-year contract with Waste Management is expiring at the end of this year. And there are a lot of significant changes we are probably going to see in the way that our waste is being handled. We are just now receiving the bids for those contracts, so nothing is kind of set in stone, but what we're seeing from those bids. In mind, this is, just so you know, this is a joint bid with nearby municipalities as part of SHACOG. So Mount Lebanon is one of many municipalities participating in this joint bid. What we're seeing is couple things that I think are very fascinating. One of them is that they're going to now pick up glass recycling as part of the single stream recycling. There's a couple other key pieces I wanted to just make you guys give you a heads up on too, but maybe let's talk about the glass first, because that's the more timely thing than the ask of the ESP. But as you saw from the memo, and I think it depends on who it's gonna be, from the waste management again or not, but they're probably gonna send it to Cap Glass as well, at least that's what we're hearing so far. But because it's single stream, you're losing theoretically, and we're hearing 20, 30, up to 40, 35% of that glass. So we probably want to encourage people who already are using the Michael Brothers drop off to continue to do so. And then use the curbside, easy convenient pickup to pick up the people that were missing. And Ian gave us the numbers about what his guesses are on that. Yeah. Any questions on that?
Yeah, we have it not be single stream. Things are better, because it doesn't just ruin the glass, it doesn't just lose glass, it loses the other recycling as well. It ruins all of the recycling when glass gets broken.
Single stream. I know, that's what I was reading, and I agree with you. However, they have new equipment, and so they're gonna get a tour of it this spring. Buildings, a machine the size of half this building that can sort it more efficiently now and save. Yes, where the.
Cool. I'm totally on board with technological advances in making that happen. But like we saw, I grafted for the climate action plan, right? When we were looking at loads of recycling lost as soon as we cut off glass recycling, that number, we gained so much more other recycling, right? That was useful by eliminating glass, right? Because I was a huge proponent of why do we get rid of glass, right? You grab glass recycling, it's hugely recyclable. So I'm a big, yeah, it's very, very useful, but the fact that it ruins other recycling is the big problem.
So in the bid as it came back, or the
Single
bid,
stream is what they want to do, and that's what they're offering. Yeah.
so my understanding was that the contract for the RFP as we put out offered different options for each municipality
We
that
will,
we could pick from.
we're not gonna do, yes, but not on that one, it's gonna be single stream recycling. Cycling within, there was no option other than single stream recycling, there are other options within.
Wow, that's great.
One other thing, the number 1 and 2 plastics, I know there were a lot of rules about the very specific types of number 1s and number 2 plastics. Is that any part of this bid is addressing that? Like, can we recycle clamshells again?
Well, and
Or is that possible?
that's still an ongoing question. I saw some municipality just in the last 2 weeks post that if it has a 1 or 2 on it, it can go in, but they were so clear about it being a bottleneck at the beginning. So it's uncertain, I think, to most residents in this one.
I haven't seen the bid specificity yet to know what numbers plastic will be recycled, but I've not seen clamshells actually recycled anywhere. So just
Yeah.
because it has a 1 or 2 on it, it's not profitable. The highest profitable recycling right now is cardboard. That's me taking it. That's been that way for years. But glass is coming back. Profitable recycling material. And like it said, we're gonna work close to distributors.
I'm for it as long as they can do it without ruining everything else. Right.
And yeah, and I don't know where that 67% number is, but we could drill into it again if you want to follow up. I'll follow up. I get where that is. Other pieces of the contract are looking like we might be encouraged to reduce the number of the amount of trash that is picked up. So the contracts are restricting the amount of waste that goes into the landfill. One of the options is a singular 96-gallon bin. Whatever trash that's bad fits into your 96-gallon bin. That would be covered by the municipality through the existing taxes. That's the way using the current structure that we do, which is like you pay for your waste management, you don't see it, it's just part of your taxes, you're not paying something. If you want an additional, whatever down in trash bag, trash bin, you're going to pay for that directly from the vendor, from waste management, or for somebody. You can actually go to the rating, pay really for that. I don't know what the rates are, depends on what we go through, and that's part of the kind of add alternates, a part of the options on the C. So that if it does pan out to be that way, which is what I'm saying, then it's gonna be on track. There's still the bulk waste, the wastes, those are allowed, they're allowed 2 items a month in what we're seeing right now from the bins, you can still put yourself out. And
But you
your
already
cash.
No. At your 2 minutes.
Yeah, you always count it, yeah.
But that would keep bags, grass, and leaves, things potentially out of this.
And you might, maybe you might get. You might get a separate thing regardless.
That would be great.
I said not limited. Right.
So this is going to a fixed bin system that's provided.
The municipalities won't have that option. If the supplier is going to require specific things being used, and each individual municipality gets to choose. If we want Lebanon want to bulk buy a bin for everybody, just deliver it, pay for that as a one-time cost. Or if we want the individuals to have that on a one-off basis, or if we want individuals to try to meet the specific, very specific.
I drive by my
bins.
local park neighbors. Waste management bins every
Yeah.
week, for example.
So, yes.
So we're going to a fixed bin.
There's going to a fixed bin.
And it's 90 gallons. That's for trash every week. That's just insane.
It's 5
That's huge.
garbage bags.
So I'm wondering if it actually works, so, is it,
Yeah,
like.
it is.
I think that where I
It is.
been where I need to take my thing.
You might be able to get a smaller one.
Maybe less.
That's what I've seen. Where I've been around. But that's not on, I haven't seen it on the table right now. But again, there's a lot of details that. Haven't even talked about that. I would,
Different question, every week recycling?
I don't know that we would pay for that extra, and we would have that option. So that's kind of what commissioners. If we get to. But still, if you want to.
I was articulating that to the appropriate people at the beginning of this whole process.
You notice that.
Clearly, it didn't work.
I don't think they're wrong.
No, exactly, that we, even if we put it in the RP, which I don't know if we did,
I think.
it got filtered out either at Shaycog or it never,
Suppliers just aren't offering,
this is waste management.
waste management.
Waste management works in California. They offer it.
I don't think often there, but they have different machines here, different trucks here. Different equipment. And then ask the commissioner for me to decide. The commissioner, is it me or them?
I'll take a smaller bin per week for recycling,
I would too. I,
because my trash bin is 2 bags, my recycling bin is 4 bags.
And you didn't get that one, they're the ones that are. they're cheaper. All right.
I wanna see that.
I know.
I don't wanna see Ian's interpretation of it. I wanna see it.
What the bid feedback is.
I wanna see it.
Okay, so our house.
Yeah, any questions on that?
So what's the end? This is like.
Okay, so
where?
glass, so
Like
the
in the
timing
process,
is
I
that,
guess.
end of the year. We will have a new contract, new supplier who starts in January.
And so if this is already decided, or what stage are we in?
We are reviewing the bids with the nearby municipalities and trying to figure out which one we're gonna go with, and
So we intended to. Do whatever else is doing.
Yes, well, yes, will be the choices. But the question for the ESV is, would you consider helping promote residents to still use the drop off locations for glass? Yes, we need more information.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, of course, I think that that's reasonable. I think the question I would have is more the proposed changes. To adding glass fountains.
I think it's fine. to do that, but I mean, we want to do it. If they're coming to pick it up every Google Drive.
I don't know.
I mean, I would take mine when I'm going to the. state. When I'm driving to the pharmacist, that's the drop off to go get more. Right. You're right.
What do they want the ESP to do?
To promote.
Create education, help with educating residents that it's a better environmental decision to drive it to Michael Brothers.
So the ask is to help the CIO come up with a marketing strategy.
Funny money, yeah.
That's basically yes, is because taking it up is better than single stream walls or something.
Let's not have single stream.
Well,
We saw numbers. 575 tons of glass was collected in 2018, and now 286 is being collected at Village Square, and that's not just Mount Lebanon.
but did you see all of the stuff they're pushing out about when you leave it in boxes or plastic bags, you're contaminating stream of glass? Like, there's been a lot of trash left over, which is our point about.
The other thing is, you'll be, if you want to go, you can go to the recycling center. So if the ESG wants to do the
The tour. Yes, we're all going to do it.
Okay.
I want to go on the tour. I want to do this.
Right.
I mean, that would be the first step.
Yeah, I would like to know the numbers. Right, like how is it better than how it was?
Because we know plastic is very firm, and well, it doesn't.
It might not be an option to do glass separately. And given that it isn't an option, I think what they're saying is try to push people to keep to.
But don't offer it, right? Like that's how you tell people not to, that's how you push people is don't offer it.
I apologize, I should be here, but Laura can come up with communications. They don't need to waste ESP's time. There, we can do a lot more important things than marketing.
Yeah, that's your opinion, and that's cool, and you know, what you guys want to do, that I'm more fun or not. It's not my, but I would feel.
I think I know.
Put it on learning doors on.
And this was a part of the climate action plan was our waste management, right? How do we improve our waste management? So beyond glass, right? How do we? I definitely wanted to have input on this process for the new waste contract. So having input on that is important for me.
As well as municipal process, right? I think we had asked that municipalities start recycling paper. Cause I don't know uptown, if that's really the done since you're taking it. How the municipality does that, but I know for most of the businesses here, there's no option.
That would be- It's just part of the contract, so something. to
Paper
look at.
don't go with our. Paper does not go with our.
Oh, but
The question is, at home, sure.
okay, I got that. Thank you. Yeah. Listen on Monday, come talk on Monday, come. Your letters, Monday. Okay.
More info on the percentage, and I'll send the email and have to be.
I'd love to read the contract.
You want to be kind of.
The rawest data possible.
Awesome.
And I have no doubt that the glass recycling has been incredibly successful. and could be even more so.
Yeah, I mean. I see we're losing a lot of black in it. I like that, let's get it down from 575 to whatever we're at now, 286 for that police purple part.
Right, and the one birds.
Yeah,
People don't know it's there. Right? Like
Yeah.
anything advertising that's there. But,
Yeah.
I don't agree.
Okay, so more on that.
so yeah, I'll ask for the two things, which are green contracts if possible, or whatever, where we are, and then, where the city starts and everything.
Anything else for connection business?
Nope, that's all it.
The next item was new business, and I was gonna briefly mention.
Uh,
I think I know that last time we talked about leaf blowers, and I meant to put it on here, and it didn't, so. But I think what I'll do is add that to our list, to the plan and decide if we want to take it on, something will do that, so. That'll come with the work plan list. But I think.
I just wanted to mention that we had the first comprehensive plan meeting that I was the ES meeting representative for. So just wanted to give a brief update from that. So the makeup of the panel that I was on, which was originally titled the anyway, sustainability and something.
Economic development, historic
Thank you.
preservation.
Thank you. No, it wasn't that. So economic development, something to that effect. I could look it up to be sure. Anyway, makeup of the panel was myself, historic preservation representative, the business partnership, a few others that I can't remember exactly who we were working with. I was the only person who the voice per se at the table. One thing that I did want to note, someone on the panel, so they sent us out some discussion questions ahead of time to read through, kind of, those and just points to talk through. One thing that did come up, one of the other panel members mentioned that he had to get a property survey for an existing roof to get solar rooftop done. And so, like, to take a step back, this was somewhat like, is there anything in the current municipal code that is blocking us from preserving, blocking us from being sustainable, blocking us from XYZ, right? You brought this up as like, if I didn't know somebody that could quickly come out and do a property survey, like that wouldn't have been able to get solar. That feels like a major thing that we should take a look at. There is something that is currently in municipal code that says you have to get a property survey to put solar panels on an existing roof. That feels wrong. So anyway, that was just one point that came up, and I wanted to mention here for future discussion. That seems silly. On a new roof, sure, maybe, but on an existing roof, yeah, no. We had quite a bit of discussion towards the very end as we were running out of time on EV charging, kind of municipal, like police, public works, EV versus garage, and how that all worked. If you would have one versus the other. There was a push to remove the word sustainability and replace it with resilience in the title of the working group, and I pushed back on that. And I pushed back again in some follow-up notes. Just having both would be fine. Resilience is great. The sustainability is different, and I think we should have both. I would note that there were public comments that environmental initiatives, and I'm not quoting, but I'm kind of semi-quoting here. Environmental initiatives are politically being motivated, not truly needed, and that colored some of the discussion in the group. And I actually wonder how many of those comments were actually there, what the volume of those comments were versus comments for sustainability, environmental things. Just wanted to note it in the group. And then at the end of the day, I had typed up a whole set of responses to all of those questions and sent them over to Ian and Jenny as the consultants. So that's kind of the breakdown. Largely, it was this discussion of kind of densification and a lot about some about walkability, some about transportation, uptown business districts, that kind of like the sustainability of the business district, right? So largely centered around that, we try to get into some of this ESP tokens.
On the related solar thing, I had a question for the commissioners. Do you know, do we have many HOAs actually in? Only a couple, so it's not really good.
Andrew Drury.
Oh, right, that. The reason I was asking is because there's been a bit of chatter in the solar community about HOAs actively working to have policies in place to not to make solar installation. My guess is that we didn't have much of a well HOAs here in
Not in that.
Yeah.
Okay. You want to.
So, yeah, the only thing that could potentially come up is that we have a historic district. It's large, and the historic district does have some influence over utilities in general. But I haven't seen them block or get involved with solar. It's really just municipal utility, it's just large scale utility.
That's something that I hadn't considered is if you are like or whatever.
It's only,
Solar shouldn't be.
I don't think so. Because it doesn't. The historic preservation doesn't. Can't require. On the property.
Not on private
It's just
property.
a recognition. It's not.
Yeah, not on private property, but on municipal property. Store building, such as this one. Not saying that it would flag anything, it's just that you don't want. They have some, it's not regulation, but they have some authority over cell towers, for example.
Yeah, it's aesthetic.
Yes.
Speaking of the blowers, sorry to go back, but how it works is being is apparently very actively adopted. I didn't say that last time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're actively adopting electric, and equipment. And they all love it. Apparently. So we're already making a migration. Apparently.
Do you know what brand they're using?
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah, I know, I'm curious too. But apparently they really like it. They're like, when they're going out to do the work, they're like, fighting over who gets the electric stuff.
Right, we have green ones in our house.
That's, that was nice to hear.
That's great.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't necessarily address the noise, but it does at least improve.
It's quieter.
Yeah. The other thing I had the resident bring up to me was from a noise pollution perspective, it was still on the radar was like air conditioning units, especially on multi-family, where they're up on the roof and they're blowing loud and then they are causing angst with other neighbors. So that was an interesting issue that I hadn't thought of. So again, it's another kind of ambient noise type of issue that conceptually can baffle your campaign. So. Another thing out there.
Anything else on your business?
I just real quick, this can be something we talk about at another meeting. We don't have to stay for very long, but I did want to, this is something I wanted to bring up last meeting. And then Southwest was the worst airline on the ever. I'm going to just share my screen real quick. And okay, can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so we have now gone over a year having our purple air monitors in place. And I did want to just point out, you can actually filter the results from the purple air monitors over the course of a year, and it averages it out. And for the most part, our community is doing pretty well. Green is good. The darker it gets, the closer it gets to red, the worse it gets. But I did want to point out that our purple air monitor that is near Howe Elementary is way worse than all the other monitors. And just to put that in perspective, I would like to zoom over to a very fun place called Beaver, where the average is about, between 60 and I think the highest is 66. So over by Howe, our annual average in that one air monitor was 63, which is right around where everything is in Beaver. So you're probably saying, well, Beaver Cracker Plant didn't open all year long. Okay, so let's go to Clairton. Clairton is about the same here. We're looking at 61 and 66 relatively right in the city of Clairton and kind of down in Elizabeth and in the towns just north of Clairton. So I did want to bring that up as an observation. I don't know what the actionable item is there, but I do think it's worth talking about what are the reasons for this? Does somebody have like a wood smoker that's right next door that's throwing that number off? Or is there genuinely a pollution problem at Howe Elementary School?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's my question. But yeah, exactly. Is there something like, how do we know it's functioning properly? What's is there a warranty on these things? Is there service on these things? This was before I was on the board, so I don't really know what the policy is, but like, there's one that's 8 right next to it. So do we know that it's functioning properly?
And this 8, I don't know whose this is. I don't believe this was one of the municipally installed monitors. I think this is just somebody's personal monitor. The ones that are municipally installed have, I guess, like a slightly darker number. I believe that's the case. I'm not 100% sure. But this 63 is definitely one of the municipally installed units by Howe Elementary. So
Thanks for taking.
just want to bring it up. I mean, these things have been installed since September of 2021, I believe.
So when you first put the regular monitors up, the person went to something happened with dust in one of the monitors red very hot. So Tim could have an issue. It could be something that's affecting that particular one like that.
Putting it in
Yeah.
boiler at school or something. I don't remember where it's located.
Yeah, that's what I want.
Is it near somebody that has a worker on fire?
Yeah. So I guess my question is what do we do about it, right? How do we? Well, I think it's responsible for looking into.
I'm just saying.
Is it correct, right?
Well, the
Yep.
easy way to assess that is to take it off of the average stem and look at the actual data points to understand,
What the range is.
yeah, what that range is, and was it like one big spike that happened that's really weird, or is that
Years worth, right? It's years worth of data to normalize out any of this.
unless
So-
something really weird happened,
Yeah.
right? It's
So-
something crazy weird.
I haven't looked at this specifically, but like something that I was hoping that we could do with this was put it onto a dashboard that is more of a time series graph rather than.
You can see the time series.
So,
on
yeah.
these, and, But, yeah, no.
But you go through and manipulate it just like this, as opposed to a dashboard.
Yeah, if there were like a dash, like if each elementary school had a dashboard, it'd be right.
We should mention that I was reading.
Put it on the agenda. Yeah, you might start catching that on the agenda for next time. Yeah.
Check this out. So I'm really thinking of hoping here, so that they bring them down.
Oh, but
All right,
that's
well-
the 1 hour, that, and it's even with the 1 hour, right, you can see there's something distinct happening there. So, that's interesting.
Definitely,
Whoops.
you should, yeah, I don't.
Thank you for looking at that. I looked earlier in the week to see what might be coming our way from the train wreck in Ohio and been watching your now.gov as well.
So on that, we'll add it to the agenda for the next meeting that they're probably interested. We can do the. Solve it out.
I'll make a note to go around the. Series data.
I'm surprised they haven't said that. There's
And if, I guess, yeah, I get a follow-up for, I don't know, who would be, I think, who's responsible for these things if they go wrong.
In your, you know, who was on the design that installed on?
I would talk to Bill about,
Yeah, you want, does the ESB want to take a look and look at the data a little bit more first, or do we want, does the specific app, you know, for Phil? Could be something like, let's swap it out, let's get it we want, like, if he needs a specific request.
Yeah.
Not look at it.
That makes the question of, is anyone on set?
No, that's,
I don't
Right. And that's understandable. Do we have any?
I'll take a look at it, but yeah. I'll send an email back to the room if there's like one particular point that I can narrow down that it is high because of, but if it is continually averaging that week over week, then yeah, we should have to.
and now that we have the 18 months of data, it might be the right time to say, okay, we could use another couple monitors in these locations, and maybe we also want to have 2 monitors as backups for one hour, for 2 monitors for ask for that money from the vision, or maybe that's outside.
I know there is one thing Tim and I had talked about when we were working on air quality with these monitors, was looking to see if there were peaks and valleys at the schools, particularly during drop off. So that's one thing that we can take in.
That could be on the work plan for the year too.
yeah, I actually did dig and look at see if there were spikes around pickup drop off, and I didn't notice anything. Yeah,
I don't see it in Jefferson, which
Yeah.
is surprising, but I've been watching it.
right, yeah, because you're saying if there was gonna be a spike, that yeah. There is,
But it's not cars, I guess, it's newspapers.
yeah,
But you probably need to get the right, you know, type of weather
Patterns.
conditions too.
Yeah.
So there may be days that there are other conditions.
I put one up at my house there. I'm like, lots of them. That was that, but.
Adjourn.
All right. We've got a motion to adjourn in the second here.
Official, this, but I think her date is the
30th.
30th, so I don't know if they'll ask us to. Amend about